Real talk. Are you out here grinding 25-hour days just to afford fancy stuff while losing the only resource you can never buy back your time? We've been brainwashed by marketing to know the price of everything but the value of nothing, leaving us with a ton of zeros in the bank but zero stability in our actual lives. Crew, new book, Well Endowed, is your essential manual to strategic spending, showing you how to leverage your money to buy back your freedom and build a financial legacy. Crew, from avoiding the hot emotional traps of car dealerships to getting financially naked before marriage, I'm giving you the insider intel to maximize your life, not just your account balance. Stop just getting rich and start staying rich with a life that's actually worth the price tag.
I mean, that is just such a vital mindset shift to make right out of the gate. The core mission of our deep dive today into Vivian Tu's work is, well, it's to completely reframe how you, the listener, actually think about wealth.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the goal of financial literacy isn't just, asset accumulation for the sake of a high score. It's really about deploying those assets strategically to buy back your security, your stability, and ultimately your time. We really have to untangle that conditioning that tells us more stuff just automatically equals a better life.
Lesson 1. Know the difference between price and value. And I think we have to start with this incredibly poignant story Vivian shares from her childhood because it perfectly illustrates how easily we get this wrong.
Oh, the school play story. Right?
Yeah, the play. So in the 5th grade, she gets cast as Orphan Duffy in the school production of Annie. And it's a speaking role, which, is a huge deal when you're that age.
Oh, for sure. Massive deal.
But her parents, who were Chinese immigrants working constantly to build a foundation in a new country, they actually missed the play because they equated providing financial security with providing value.
Right.
They were buying her fruit roll-ups and the newest MP3 players, working around the clock to afford those tangible things, but they weren't in the audience. But okay, let's unpack this. Well, let's unpack this, but I feel like I have to push back a little here. Isn't that hustle culture exactly what is required to get ahead? You have to grind to build the foundation, especially as an immigrant.
It is, yeah. The necessity of building that foundation is very real.
But at the same time, earning all that money without enjoying the fruits of your labor, it's kind of like buying a front row concert ticket and then spending the entire show just staring at a spreadsheet on your phone. You're physically there, but you're missing the music.
That is a great way to put it. And the trap is getting stuck in that hustle mode forever. And that's exactly the realization Vivian has as an adult. She tells this parallel story where she's, finally successful, and she flies her parents out for an incredibly lavish, Michelin-starred first-class luxury vacation.
Which sounds amazing.
Right. But on the final leg of the trip, they're sitting together in her living room. And what does she do? She immediately opens her laptop to answer work emails.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she caught herself in the act of repeating the exact same cycle. Because the psychological mechanism here is that our human brains, we love easy metrics. We can easily quantify the price of those first-class plane tickets. So our brain says, hey, look at this immense value I'm providing.
We literally see the dollar signs.
Exactly. But we fail to realize that the true value, the actual thing that moves the needle on human happiness, is the time spent together. She was letting the quantifiable price tag of the trip blind her to the completely unquantifiable value of her just being present in the room with them.
Lesson 2, de-influence your brain. Because once you understand that difference internally, you have to actively de-influence your brain from external manipulation. Because, man, this internal confusion we have about value is constantly being exploited.
Oh, absolutely it is.
There's this hilarious story she tells about going to the Chinese buffet with her family as a kid. And her parents treated it like an extreme competitive sport.
I've read a whole system, right?
Yeah, a ruthless optimization strategy. You stand by the kitchen doors and you eat the crab, the lobster, and the shrimp first. You actively avoid the cheap pizza and the fried rice sitting right at the front.
Because those are traps.
Exactly. Traps designed by the restaurant to fill you up on cheap carbs so you don't eat the expensive seafood. And modern marketing is basically serving us that cheap pizza all day long, especially using the bandwagon effect on social media.
Oh, social media is the worst for this.
We see an influencer with a new designer bag or a perfectly organized pantry, and suddenly we think we need to buy 40 acrylic bins to be happy.
What's fascinating here is how truly insidious those cheap pizza traps are today. It's the sheer sophistication of the psychological tactics being used against you. Companies don't just want to tap into an existing market of buyers, they actively engineer artificial insecurities to expand that market.
Wait, how do they do that?
Take tracking pixels, for instance. Those are tiny, invisible dots of code on websites that follow your browsing habits across the internet. They cross-reference your social media scrolls, the articles you read, and the items you leave in your cart, building this terrifyingly accurate profile of your vulnerabilities.
That is deeply creepy.
It is. Or look at the decoy effect. If you go to a movie theater and a small popcorn is $9, a medium is $12, and a large is $13.
You buy the large.
Right, because you think you just hacked the system and got a great deal. But the medium only exists to be a decoy. It anchors your perception and manipulates you into spending $13 when you walked in, only wanting to spend $9. They even gamify the experience. Like Starbucks rewards programs, they turn spending your actual hard-earned cash into a digital quest for stars, which completely abstracts the psychological pain of parting with your money.
It is wild how effectively they separate us from our cash by making it feel like a game. So I want to pose this directly to you listening right now. Think about the last spontaneous thing you bought. Are you buying that item because it actually solves a real problem in your life? Or are you buying it because an algorithm wore down your resistance by showing it to you 18 times today?
That is the perfect question to ask. Applying that filter forces you to strip away the artificial urgency created by the marketing machine, and it brings you right back to your actual needs.
Lesson 3. The 35 and 24/10 rule for cars. Because we have to apply that clear-headed logic to our biggest purchases. And for most of us, vehicles are the biggest financial trap we fall into. Vivian talks about driving a hand-me-down, paint-peeling Honda Accord she named Sheldon.
Good old Sheldon.
Good old Sheldon. And she contrasts Sheldon with her friend Chris, who got his first consulting job and immediately bought a flashy BMW to flex on everyone, which he instantly regretted because he was drowning in payments.
Yeah.
So how do we avoid becoming Chris? What is the actual mathematical framework we should be using here?
So, the framework she provides is incredibly effective for keeping you grounded. First, if you're paying cash for a car, you should spend no more than 35% of your gross annual income.
Okay, so if you make $100,000.
Your absolute ceiling is a $35,000 car. But, most people finance. So if you are financing, you follow the 24/10 rule.
Break that down for us.
Okay, so that means you put a minimum of 20% down, which protects you from instantly being underwater on the loan the moment you drive off a lot. Then you commit to a maximum 4-year loan term. Cars are rapidly depreciating assets, and stretching a loan to 6 or 7 years just means you're paying massive interest on something that is losing value daily.
And the 10.
Finally, the total monthly transportation cost, meaning the loan, the insurance, and the gas, cannot exceed 10% of your gross monthly income.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you think about it, financing a depreciating asset just for the status symbol is financially absurd. Imagine renting a wildly expensive custom-tailored tuxedo.
Okay, I like this analogy.
But every single day you wear it, it gets slightly more frayed, the color fades, and it goes out of style. Yet you choose to wear this degrading tuxedo to the grocery store every day, just hoping a stranger in the produce aisle notices it. That is exactly what you're doing when you over-leverage yourself for a luxury car.
Yes, and what makes that depreciating tuxedo even worse is that you're paying a bank interest for the privilege of wearing it. The reason people make that illogical choice comes down to what psychologists call hot and cold cognition.
Hot and cold cognition.
Yeah, it stems from behavioral research showing that when we are in a hot, highly emotional state, our executive function shuts down and we make impulsive decisions. Car dealerships are expertly engineered environments designed to put you in that hot state.
Oh, like the new car smell.
The smell, the roar of the engine on the test drive, the artificial time pressure from the salesperson, it's all designed to overwhelm you. The countermeasure is forcing yourself into a cold, analytical state.
How do you do that?
You do that by going to your local bank or credit union beforehand and getting pre-approved for a loan. It locks your budget in place in a sterile, low-emotion environment, completely removing the dealership's leverage over you.
Lesson 4. Get financially naked before you say I do. Because if buying a car is a major emotional and financial decision, choosing a life partner is the ultimate corporate merger. You really need to get financially naked before you say I do.
You really do.
Vivian advocates for what she calls a DTR date, defining the relationship. There's this part in the book that I thought was hilarious, but also kind of terrifying. She suggests making some pasta, pouring some wine, pulling out a board game like Monopoly, and getting completely financially naked with your partner.
Which means putting it all out there.
Right. You share your exact debt numbers, pull up your credit scores right there on your phones, and discuss your financial baggage. But I have to ask, Doesn't scheduling what is essentially a shareholders meeting for a romantic relationship completely kill the romance?
Well, I mean, it might feel deeply uncomfortable and unromantic in the moment, yes. But it truly destroys a romance permanently?
What's that?
Finding out about $50,000 of secret credit card debt 3 years into a marriage. And statistically, having this conversation early is non-negotiable. Roughly 76% of couples cohabitate before marriage today.
Wow, 76%.
Yeah. That means your first binding legal contract with your partner is usually a residential lease, not a marriage certificate.
Huh.
If you don't know their financial habits, you are flying blind into a legally binding financial agreement.
That is a terrifying thought.
It is. Furthermore, Vivian warns against complete financial codependence, where you share 100% of your accounts and have no independent money. That is a dangerous trap that can lead to financial abuse or leave you completely stranded if your partner is incapacitated.
So what's the alternative?
The healthiest, most sustainable structure is yours, mine, and ours. You each maintain independent checking accounts for personal autonomy, and you both contribute equitably to a joint account for shared household expenses. It provides mutual security without sacrificing your individual safety net.
Lesson 5. Prenups are insurance against the government. Because if you skip those awkward financial meetings over wine, prenups are insurance against the government stepping in to make those decisions for you. We really need to demystify the prenup. So many people treat it like an admission that the marriage is doomed from the start.
Yeah, they think it's just for billionaires protecting their yachts.
Exactly. But it's not. It is simply a proactive contract.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the reality is that every single married couple already has a prenuptial agreement.
Wait, really? How?
It is simply the default marital property laws of the state you happen to live in. So the fundamental question isn't, should we get a prenup? The question is, why would you let a government bureaucracy that doesn't know you, doesn't know your specific values, and doesn't care about your unique family dynamic dictate exactly how your assets are split if the worst happens?
That makes total sense. You're just taking back control.
Drafting your own prenup is taking control of your own rules. It is a sign of immense maturity and mutual respect, not a lack of trust.
Lesson 6. Calculate your delta to buyback time. So marriage contracts protect your long-term assets, but you also need strategies to protect your daily sanity and your daily energy. Vivian introduces the concept of the delta.
This is a huge one.
It is the mathematical difference between your earning potential and the cost you pay to save time. Let's say you are a freelancer and your time is worth $60 an hour. You decide to pay a $7 delivery fee for DoorDash. If having that food delivered saves you 45 minutes of cooking and cleaning, and you actually use that 45 minutes to bill a client or do deep work, that is a mathematically positive delta. You literally profited by paying for convenience.
Precisely.
It's like Vivian's parents hiring William the lawn guy. They aren't paying him for short grass. They are paying him to buy back their Saturday afternoon so their bodies can rest.
And that distinction is paramount because time is the only truly finite resource we possess.
Sure.
We often view paying for convenience as a moral failing, or, we internalize it as laziness.
Oh, the guilt is so real.
Right. But if you apply the delta concept strategically, paying for convenience is actually an investment in your own earning potential and your own mental health. It prevents burnout. And burnout is the single biggest threat to your long-term earning capacity. When you pay someone to mow your lawn or deliver your groceries so you can rest or work on a high-leverage project, you are leveraging capital to protect your most valuable asset, which is yourself.
Lesson 7. Use the cash and strip method for windfalls. Because eventually, if you protect that earning potential, you'll experience a windfall, a sudden chunk of extra money like a year-end bonus, a tax refund, or an inheritance. Vivian talks about her days in ad sales at BuzzFeed.
Oh, yeah, the tech industry bonuses.
Our colleagues would get these massive, irregular commission checks, and it would trigger immediate, impulsive spending sprees. People were buying designer bags and financing luxury cars the second the direct deposit hit. So how does the strip method actually stop us from doing that?
To understand the solution, you first have to understand the mechanism driving that behavior. It is a psychological phenomenon called ego depletion. Willpower is not a personality trait. It is a cognitive muscle.
Okay.
For commission-based workers or anyone dealing with irregular income, you spend so much mental energy budgeting, restricting yourself, and stressing during the lean months that your executive function gets completely exhausted.
So when the money comes in.
When the big check finally hits, your willpower muscle has nothing left. You just snap. The STRIP framework is designed to remove decision fatigue entirely. It stands for Savings, Total Debt, Retirement, Investments, Planning.
Okay, I like that acronym.
You automatically funnel the windfall into those buckets in that exact order before you even browse for those designer shoes. And within that framework, the approach to total debt relies on the 7% rule.
What's the 7% rule?
If you have debt with an interest rate above 7%, like a credit card, you use the windfall to pay it off immediately because that interest is bleeding you dry. But if your debt is below 7%, like a 2.5% mortgage secured during the pandemic, you should actually invest the windfall instead.
Really? You wouldn't pay off the house?
Mathematically, no. The broader stock market historically returns an average of 8 to 10% annually. You are mathematically making more money in the market than you would save by paying off that cheap debt early.
Lesson 8. Find your FU number, which is really where all those windfalls and investments are leading. It is the absolute end game of personal finance, reaching the exact point where working is no longer a requirement for your survival. The formula for your FU number is beautifully simple. Take your current monthly expenses, multiply by 12 to get your annual expenses, and then divide that number by 0.04.
That 0.04 represents the 4% safe withdrawal rate.
Exactly. Vivian also shares a brilliant rule for your asset mix to protect that money as you age. Take your current age, round it to the nearest 5, and subtract 10. That resulting number is the exact percentage of your portfolio that should be held in stable bonds, with the rest left in growth stocks. So what does this all mean for you listening? It means you are essentially building an infinite financial battery.
An infinite battery. I love that imagery.
If your investments grow at an average of 8%, but you only ever withdraw 4% a year to live on, the battery recharges itself through market growth faster than you can ever drain it. You become financially invincible.
That infinite battery is the ultimate goal. But actuaries and financial planners don't just blindly trust averages because, well, the stock market doesn't move in a smooth, straight line.
Right, there are crashes.
Exactly. They test that infinite battery using what are called Monte Carlo simulations. This is a complex statistical model that runs thousands of different randomized scenarios. It looks at the best case of 6% real returns, a middle case of 4%, and a worst case scenario like 3%.
Okay, that makes sense.
More importantly, it factors in sequence of returns risk. That is the specific danger of a massive market crash happening the exact year you retire. If your portfolio drops 20% in year 1, it is vastly more devastating than if it drops 20% in year 15, because you lose the compounding power of that capital. Running these Monte Carlo simulations ensures that your FU number is robust enough to survive those worst-case chronological scenarios, ensuring you don't run out of money before you run out of time.
Lesson 10. Insurance is protection, not an investment. And yes, we are jumping straight to 10 because it's that important. Once you have painstakingly built that infinite battery, your FU number, you have to put a heavy-duty protective case around it. Right now, there are all these TikTok gurus in skin-tight polos trying to sell young people on infinite banking using whole life insurance.
Yes, those videos drive me crazy.
They frame it as a secret wealth-building cheat code that the elites use. But for the vast majority of regular people, whole life is a terrible investment vehicle loaded with massive hidden fees. Instead, you want to use a laddering strategy with term life insurance. This means you buy a 10-year, a 20-year, and a 30-year policy all at once. As your kids grow up and your mortgage shrinks, your actual financial liabilities drop. Those staggered policies naturally expire one by one over time, dropping your premium costs exactly when you no longer need that massive blanket of coverage.
It is so important to look at the history of this industry to understand its actual purpose. Modern insurance essentially traces its psychological roots back to the mafia, offering protection for immigrant-owned businesses in the early 20th century.
Wait, the mafia?
Really? Yeah. You paid a steady premium so that if someone broke your window or started a fire, the mob made you whole. It was never, ever designed to make the business owner wealthy. It was designed strictly to provide peace of mind and prevent catastrophic ruin. And right now, the modern insurance model is breaking down. Climate change is completely upending the actuaries' math. They are seeing natural disasters at a frequency and severity that entirely breaks their historical models. That means coverage is shrinking, companies are abandoning high-risk states entirely, and premiums for the rest of us are skyrocketing.
So wait, if the entire system is breaking down, the math is failing, and premiums are going through the roof, why should we continue to buy into it?
Because the goal of insurance isn't to turn a profit on your premiums. The goal is to prevent a total unrecoverable wipeout of your FU number. Vivian uses the incredibly relatable example of insuring her engagement ring. She knows she's clumsy.
Right.
If she is out on a red carpet and knocks her hand against a wall and the diamond pops out, she doesn't want to have to liquidate a chunk of her investment portfolio and incur capital gains taxes just to replace it. When you buy insurance, you are paying a known manageable premium to transfer the risk of an unknown, completely unmanageable catastrophe to a massive corporation. It is the moat around your financial castle.
That is a great way to think about it.
And that really brings us full circle to the core philosophy of strategic spending that we've been talking about today. If you knew exactly how many days you had left to live, how would your budget change today? Would you still be buying luxury cars to impress neighbors you don't even like? Or would you be spending that capital to maximize the security, the comfort, and the uninterrupted time you have with the people you genuinely love?
That is definitely something to chew on. Thank you for watching. Please like us, share, subscribe, follow up in the next video.